So today we have to discuss what's going on in Philadelphia because there's not enough eyes on it. And while some people are very happy that Joel Embiid ended up signing his extension, there are some genuine concerns that I have as to the roster construction, the overall expectations of already considering them to be contenders when we know they have a lot of cogs in the machine that haven't been the most reliable as of late or ever in their career. With that being said, it's your boy Ray Hoops. Thank you for tuning in to this video. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this one. Now, for those that have been living under a rock or just aren't 76ers fans, understandably so, Joel Embiid just signed a 3-year, $192.9 million max contract extension, which will carry him out through the 2028-2029 season, which will total his overall extension to basically $300 million. Now, this is impressive and it is deserved. And if you are the 76ers, this is a move that you have to do. It's not very often that you get a generational talent, or even if you don't want to say generational, you don't really have a franchise cornerstone that's just going to waltz into your door off the draft board or via trade in Philadelphia. So the fact that he says vocally that he wants to stay in Philadelphia for the rest of his career and re-signed for this after declining his, I believe it was 2025-2026 player option, it makes sense because he went from being expected to make $59 million then to, at the end of the 2028-2029 season, making $69 million in that year, which is big money, put lightly. Now, overall, we understand he is an MVP candidate, several years coming. He's a very reliable player. I felt like he got a pity MVP award at one point. But overall, we can't deny that he has been a phenomenal regular season player. However, it's a very strong however, with a grain of salt though, there's no playoff success to his name. And it sounds like a broken record coming from a lot of people, and I'm going to harp on it just a little bit more, but for this year it's going to be a little bit different because they basically gutted the roster. There were so many removals and additions this past offseason. It actually was crazy. And I understand why it happened, but you're looking at them signing Justice Edwards, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, David Jones, and Jeff Doughton Jr., Gershon Yabusele, Ricky Council the fourth, Kai Jones. Like, there was a lot of guys from April onward that ended up getting signed. There was also a lot of guys that ended up getting just left but by the wayside. The biggest signing that they had obviously ended up being Paul George after he just said, you know what, Clippers, deuces. Effectively making their trade where they ended up retaining Paul George in exchange for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plus a couple other pieces and a bunch of draft capital, the worst trade in NBA history because they got nothing from it. Even if you look at the DeJounte Murray trade that sent him over to Atlanta and failed after a year, they didn't get everything back that they originally traded for him, but they got back about half as much, which is a loss, but it's still something. And if you look at this situation with Paul George, they got nothing out of it. The Clippers were screwed over as soon as he said, you know what, I feel disrespected. I feel like you guys don't value me. I feel like you guys don't think I'm worth the money that I feel like I'm worth. I'm out. And so now you have two players that are the top 5 players in NBA history as far as earnings will go once their contracts finish out between Paul George and the one and only Joel Embiid, which makes sense, as I said before, but at the same time, you can't sit here and expect everything to be peachy and just make so much sense because to me, it's just kind of a shoulder shrug. I don't hate the move. It makes sense. It's something that had to happen, but overall, I don't love what they have going on in the area. And that's not to sit there and rag on them and say, oh, they don't deserve the money that they're getting paid, or, oh, they're going to fail. Because while I do think that they are likely to not be successful in the playoffs, there's still the opportunity that they do because they have the talent to do so. Their starting lineup, at the very least, according to ESPN, heading into the 2024-2025 season will be Tyrese Maxey at the 1, Kelly Oubre Jr. at the shooting guard position, Paul George at the small forward, Caleb Martin at the power forward, and Joel Embiid at the center. Interesting. Second unit, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, KJ Martin, and then Andre Drummond. And then you'll have a mix of Jared McCain, Ricky Council IV, and Reggie Jackson, along with Adem Bona, trying to sprinkle in minutes here and there. So overall, you have an interesting collection of players. We know that Tyrese Maxey has shown us one of the best versions of himself that he could potentially be last year. I think he will continue to ascend ever so slightly more. I don't know how much higher his ceiling can honestly get. He's a really good defender. He's a really good scorer. He's a really good playmaker. He's taken those steps forward last year specifically. So coming into this year with the additional help of Paul George, he should be able to take a little bit of less off the gas. He shouldn't be an injury risk at all, even though he hasn't really been considered one ever in the past, but it should just bode well for his overall load that he's expected to carry on offense. Joel Embiid similarly will not be expected to do too terribly much because he has a reliable option. And you can say, oh, Tobias Harris, they're going to miss. No, they're not. Respectfully, in the regular season at least, and I think in the postseason, Paul George will definitely be more reliable than Tobias Harris, respectfully. Again, Caleb Martin was a quality pickup. I think that Kelly Oubre Jr. being retained is a quality move. And of course, having Joel Embiid re-signed, even though he already had a couple years left, and just going ahead and getting that knocked out of the park right now makes a lot of sense. The salary cap's going to go up with time, and the money will be there for other guys. Now, them adding in guys like Eric Gordon, and having Kyle Lowry, doing his thing, Andre Drummond backing up Joel Embiid. I think that's a very quality move, and Adem Bona I actually am high on. If he is actually 6'8", that does question a little bit, but defensive versatility I think he has. He moves his feet pretty well. He's not terrific in pick and rolls, but he's reliable enough if you get to that point in the season where you need that little mix and match between him and Andre Drummond coming off the bench, or if injuries happen or Joel Embiid just needs a load management day, you get to see a little bit more of them. I think Caleb Martin is going to be reliable alongside KJ Martin. Paul George is going to be Paul George. He had his healthiest season with the Clippers last year where I believe he played 72 games and he put up solid numbers, so we can't sit here and act like he's at the decline of his career because he's not quite there yet. He's getting up there, but he's not quite there yet. You also have Kelly Oubre, as I said, who doesn't put up phenomenal numbers. He had a couple stories in the past couple of years in the news with car accidents and just little minor incidences. But overall, on the court, he's looked like a pretty decent fit. He's a solid defender. He's not terrific, but he's been decent and respectable. And then, like I said, Tyrese Maxey has been that one piece that's really been able to push them over the top over the past year, even if you want to go back 2 years before he was expected to really take that leap. And he took that leap in stride and just got the job done very, very well. So, my issues. Number one is going to be chemistry. You have teams like the Knicks, who have the Villanova boys. You have teams like the Celtics, who just had the most cohesive run of a roster to the finals probably ever, to the point where Jason Tatum could shoot terrible from the field, but still was able to win because everybody else did their job so well. And so he just filled in the gaps where he could with the rebounding, assisting, and just playing hard-nosed defense, right? And then you have the Pacers, who only made it that far through their chemistry, in my personal opinion, because they don't have anything that really just makes them a phenomenal team individually. This 76ers team reminds me more so of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have some solid pieces. And honestly, I couldn't even say the Cleveland Cavaliers because they've had some continuity. This team has very little continuity. And some of their bigger pieces, yes, like Tyrese Maxey spent all his time with the 76ers, Joel Embiid, entire time with the 76ers, Kelly Oubre, a couple years, Kyle Lowry, a couple years. But overall, there's a lot of key cogs in the machine that got added, like your Caleb Martins and your Paul Georges, that are going to be some interesting things, because how much will we actually get out of them? Will Paul George be as healthy as he was last year? Or will he see a regression year? Will he be able to put up the same numbers with the same level of consistency? What kind of offensive system are we going to run? Obviously, we saw Joel Embiid suffer in Olympic play because when he was not the hub of the offense, he was too slow to actually get anything done on that side of the ball, and he ended up being turnover prone, especially with the fact that the three-point line is a little bit shrunken, which shrinks the court, makes things easier for defense. I think that him experiencing that will make him, by default, become better and a little bit faster with his mental computer, just taking those steps and going through those progressions heading into this season, and I think we'll see a growth out of him actually from that standpoint. And his numbers may not be jumping off the page. They may not be career highs in any category. But overall, I think his play as a whole will change from an eye test standpoint, if that makes sense. Paul George, I think, will be a key cog in that because he will have the opportunity to be a secondary ball handler once again. He won't be expected to carry the offensive load. This is not his team. And honestly, he shouldn't be the second best guy on the team. That should be Tyrese Maxey. He is ascending to the throne. So that gives Paul George the comfortable third spot. And then you have Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre, who are decent enough to hold their own on the wing. They're not terrific, but they're definitely going to not be a slouch, whether it be on offense or on defense, to be quite honest with you. So it, to me, is going to be a thing of, number one, they will have spacing. How will Joel Embiid work with this new style that they're going to end up having to run with Paul George and Caleb Martin? Because Paul George, yes, Tobias Harris and him have a little bit of a crossover in game, but they are not the same player. Paul George is a whole different tier. So you're going to have to cater the offense to him. Defensively, can Paul George relax a little bit? Can he rely on the other guys around him on the court to help him out? I think so. I think that Joel Embiid will be able to do what he does well and play drop coverage and pick and rolls. He might get abused a little bit, particularly in the playoffs, but in the regular season, I don't think we're going to see too many fails out of this team. There's going to be some rough patches, don't get it twisted. But this is a 54-ish win roster to me. The playoffs is where it becomes complicated because if they are not on the same page by playoff time, they will struggle. We're going to see the Cleveland Cavaliers come out firing. We're going to see the Indiana Pacers firing. We're going to see Paolo Banchero and the Orlando Magic taking a step forward. They got better this offseason with their additions. They got KCP and a couple other pieces. They're looking good. They are consistent. They are reliable. I trust their overall team chemistry and reliance on one another as long as they have a shooting touch over the 76ers roster, respectfully. I could be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. But I definitely think that there's an argument to be had there. Then, not to mention the two main guys that I think are going to be going back, the Celtics, and you're going to obviously have the Villanova Knicks. But overall, I don't hate this 76ers roster. I just think that there's some honest concerns to be had there. The chemistry, I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, if chemistry is all you can come up with, then that's nothing. Chemistry matters. Who you have personnel-wise on your roster matters. How defensively versatile they're going to be and how much they're going to be fluid on that side of the ball is going to matter. Because miscommunications cost you points. And in clutch time, you can't have miscommunications. So they need to go ahead and get these out now at the very beginning of the season. And by midseason, around game 35 to 45, we'll know who this team is. And by the end of the season, we'll really know who this team is because we'll have a full sample size, a full season of play. And as long as we don't see any injuries that are too serious, again, like I said, there's going to be a little bit of an injury risk, not the same way that I was saying last year with the Phoenix Suns, but Paul George and Joel Embiid are notorious for not being the healthiest individuals. If they can stay healthy, if they can get their chemistry down pat, and if they're hitting their shots from particularly beyond the arc come postseason time, then they will be a force to be reckoned with. But it's going to be hard to pick them over some of the other powerhouses and teams that just looked so fluid last year going into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference at that. In the Western Conference, I would say that they're even lower on the totem pole, obviously, because the West is a lot more stacked and there's a lot more impressionable teams that, pull at the heartstrings a little bit more. But in the East, just looking at the playoff picture, looking at the personnel that they have, I like the people that they have on the roster on paper. But in practice and on paper are not synonymous with the same thing. They will not always yield the same results. And that is my biggest concern. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, I'm interested to hear what you have to say. What seed do you have them placing at? And do you see them making it past the second round? Depending on their first round matchup, in my opinion, they might not make it out of the first round. But if they can avoid, I'll say specifically the Boston Celtics, I don't want to see that. I would enjoy a very good series with them and the Orlando Magic, but I don't guarantee that they win that one. But for sure, I don't want to see them have to deal with the New York Knicks. If they can avoid the Celtics and the Knicks in the first round, I could see them definitely moving forward if things go well for them and if everybody's healthy, because health is wealth. And while they say availability is the best ability, and that's a little bit questionable at times, I think in this case, it is going to be most important. With that being said, it's been your boy Ray Hoops. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications if you made it this far and you're new to the channel. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're in the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in